was sitting in my car in the gym parking lot recently with the engine off, staring at the steering wheel. I had just finished a workout, a really good one, the kind where you know you showed up. And instead of feeling good about it, I heard myself think I should have added one more set. Now, that's not a thought about fitness. That's a thought about worth. And I realized I do this everywhere. I finish an episode and I think, it should have been tighter. I spend an afternoon with my wife and I think, I should have been more present. I complete a project I've been working on for months and I think, I should have been better, faster, or different. There was never a moment where I hit enough. The line kept moving. Every finish line became a starting line for the next insufficiency. And I don't think I'm alone in this. Here's something strange. We spend enormous energy trying to do more, to be more, and to achieve more, and almost no energy defining what enough would actually look like. We treat enough like it's a failure word, almost like we're settling or we're giving up. But what if enough isn't where ambition goes to die? What if it's where sustainable growth actually begins? Welcome back to Uplifted Living. I'm Nick Gilbert. This is Season 2, Episode 8. If you're new to the show and this is the first episode you're hearing, this is a podcast about personal growth without the burnout, a calmer approach to self-improvement. And today, we're talking about something that sits at the very center of that calm, the enough threshold. How to know when you've done enough in a culture that will never tell you. Because here's the thing nobody warns you about. When you start taking your own growth seriously, you also get really good at finding what's wrong, what's missing, what's not there yet. The same skill that helps you improve is the skill that makes it impossible to feel satisfied. That's not a personal failure. That's a design problem. And today, we're going to redesign it. Imagine you're building a house. You lay the foundation, frame the walls, put on the roof. At some point, the house is structurally complete. It is, by any reasonable definition, a house. You could live in it. But if you're someone who struggles with enough, you don't see a house. You see the trim that isn't painted yet, the backsplash that hasn't been installed, the landscaping that's still just dirt. You see everything the house isn't and none of what it is. Here's the problem with that. If you never acknowledge the house is a house, you never move in. You spend years, decades maybe, standing outside a perfectly livable structure, telling yourself you'll rest when it's finished, when the last detail is perfect. It's never finished. You know this. The details are infinite. So, what I want to offer today isn't a productivity hack for getting more done. It's 3 anchors for recognizing when you've already done enough and what becomes possible when you let yourself believe it. The next time you feel the not enough feeling, that familiar ache that says you should have done more, been more, or achieved more, I want you to finish this sentence. More blank. Not more effort, not more productivity, not more growth. Those aren't answers. Those are placeholders. What specifically? More money? How much? More recognition? From whom? More free time? To do what? Here's why this matters. When more is vague, it's infinite. You can never reach it because there's literally no finish line. It's like running a race where the organizers keep moving the tape back every time you get close, except you're the organizer and you don't realize you're doing it. Undefined more is not ambition. It's a trap designed so you can never win. I started doing this with my own inner critic. The one that told me I should have done one more set, and I asked, more of what exactly? More muscle? That's a 5-year project, not a single workout. More intensity? I was already at 85% of my capacity. The last 15% would have increased my injury risk and added maybe only 2% to the outcome. More proof that I'm disciplined? Now we're getting somewhere. That's when I realized the more I was chasing had nothing to do with fitness. I was trying to prove something to myself, that I'm the kind of person who doesn't quit, that I'm tough, that I deserve to feel okay. The workout wasn't the point. The workout was evidence in a trial I didn't even know I was holding, where I was the defendant, the prosecutor, and the judge. So the first anchor is this. When the not enough feeling shows up, name what more actually means. Get painfully specific, because the moment you do, one of two things are going to happen. Either you realize the more is unreasonable, adding one set wouldn't have changed anything meaningful, or you realize the more isn't even about the thing you're doing. It's about something deeper. Something the workout, the project, the episode was never going to solve. Either way, you get to stop running a race with no finish line. Every more has a cost. This sounds obvious, but most of us never calculate it. We just feel the pull, follow the pull, and deal with the consequences later, usually when we're exhausted, resentful, and wondering why we're doing any of this in the first place anyway. So the second anchor is what I call the cost audit. When you're chasing more output, more optimization, more achievement, ask yourself, what is this actually costing me? If I add one more set to this workout, it costs me 15 minutes I could spend with my family. It costs recovery capacity that might make tomorrow's workout worse. It costs the feeling of completion, of walking out of the gym satisfied instead of chasing something I can't name. And here's the question that changed things for me. Is the more worth more than what it costs? Not is the cost acceptable, is the more worth more? Because sometimes it is. Sometimes pushing through on a creative project produces something meaningfully better. The goal isn't to never push. The goal is to know why you're pushing and to make sure the trade actually makes sense. Most of us, when we really sit with this, discover something uncomfortable. We're spending enormous resources, time, energy, attention, health on more that isn't actually producing more. It's just producing guilt reduction. We do more, not because the more is valuable, but because stopping makes us feel guilty, and guilt is a terrible reason to do anything. The cost audit does something else too. It reveals that some of your more is actually taking you backward. More hours on a project that's already good enough? You're not improving it. You're just rearranging the deck chairs. More optimization of a routine that's already working? You're not making it better. You're just making it brittle. The enough threshold isn't about doing less. It's about doing what actually matters and having the discernment to know the difference. The first two anchors, naming the more and running the cost audit, those are reactive. You use them when the not enough feeling is already here. And they help. They really help. But the third anchor is proactive. And it's the one that over time actually rewires the patterns. Define enough before you start. Before you begin a workday, write down what enough looks like. Before you start a creative project, define what completion actually means. Before you enter a conversation with someone you love, clarify what would make it meaningful. The enough practice is this. Enough is a decision you make in advance, not a feeling you wait for. Because here's what I've learned. The feeling of enough almost never arrives on its own. If you wait to feel like you've done enough, you will wait forever. The feeling follows the decision, not the other way around. Let me give you a practical example. On the days I write these episodes, I used to sit down with an open-ended goal, work on the episode, and I'd work until I was exhausted, or until I ran out of time, or until my brain stopped producing coherent sentences. And then I'd stop, but I'd never feel done. I'd just feel depleted. Now, I sit down and I define enough. Complete a full draft of the cold open and 3 anchors. It doesn't have to be good, just has to be complete. That's it. That's enough. And here's what happens. When I hit that mark, when the draft exists, rough as it might be, I have a choice. I can stop because I've done what I said I would do. Or I can keep going because I want to, not because I'm afraid of not doing enough. The energy is completely different. When you keep going from enough, you're operating from surplus, from choice, from I want to, not I have to. When you keep going from not enough, you're operating from deficit, from fear, from I'm trying to prove something. It's the same action, completely different experience. And here's the part that surprised me the most. When I actually let enough be enough, when I stopped at the defined point and walked away, the quality of my work improved. Because I wasn't grinding out diminishing returns. I was showing up rested. I was giving my brain space to process. I was, without realizing it, building trust with myself. Every time I said, this is enough, and stopped, that was a tiny receipt, a promise kept. The trust battery, if you listen to episode 7, doesn't just apply to big commitments. It applies to this too. Every time you honor your own definition of enough, you're making a deposit. You're telling yourself, I set a boundary and I keep it. That adds up. Those are the 3 anchors. Name the more, get specific about what you're actually chasing, run the cost audit, ask whether the more is worth more than what it costs, and practice defining enough in advance. Make it a decision, not a feeling. Keep them. But before we close, I want to offer some comfort. If you have spent years feeling like whatever you do, it's never quite enough, I want you to hear something. That feeling isn't evidence that you're failing. It's evidence that someone, somewhere, taught you that your worth is tied to your output, that resting is laziness, that good enough isn't good enough. Maybe it was a parent who only praised the A, never the effort. Maybe it was a boss who moved the target every time you got close. Maybe it was a culture that told you your value is your productivity, and that productivity has no ceiling. You didn't design that system. You just learned to live inside of it. But here's what's true. You have built things. You have shown up. You have done work that mattered to you, to people around you, to the world. And most of it, by any reasonable standard, was enough. It was more than enough. You just couldn't feel it because the system was designed so you never would. You are not behind. You are not insufficient. You have just been running a race with no finish line and wondering why you're tired. The enough threshold is not about doing less. It's about finally moving into the house you've already built, letting the trim go unpainted for a while, sitting in the living room, noticing that the roof holds, the walls are solid. You built something real. And from that place, from enough, not from deficit, you can still grow. You can still improve. You can still want more. But now you're doing it from a home you actually live in. Thank you for being here this week. If today's episode helped you to see the finish line you've been ignoring, share it with someone who's been running a race they can't win. Follow the show wherever you listen. New episodes bi-weekly. Take care of yourself. Actually.